This is chapter number 7, and we're going to look at epidemiology and longitudinal designs. So let's go ahead and get started. When we're looking at epidemiology, we're looking at the study of distribution and determinants of health-related states and events in human populations. And really, epidemiology is the foundation of most research in healthcare. And sometimes we think of epidemiology just as something specific to public health, but really looking at the experience of disease, the determinants of health overall really has a strong impact on what we do no matter where we practice in healthcare. So when we're looking at epidemiology, the primary components are really incidence, which is the frequency of new occurrences, and that's really important to know, and you will need to use the correct words when you're examining the research. So the incidence is the frequency of new occurrences, which differs from prevalence, which is the count of all existing cases at a given time. So not only is it the new cases that come up, it's those that are existing. So this is really important when we're looking at chronic diseases, because the prevalence may be much greater than the incidence. So it's important to know that difference. So we talked about case studies in our descriptive section, and case studies are also involved in epidemiological studies, and what they do, just like in descriptive studies, they're providing those new insights of problems that do exist and raise new concerns, because that can develop further, more complex studies. So that's really important when we look at case studies. And just like we talked about earlier, it may be one case or several cases, but again, it's a foundational component of building our body of knowledge. So when we're looking at field and community trials, they are kind of designed to test those interventions to prevent health-related problems. And when we're doing community level trials, they're much bigger. So they're on those community-wide interventions. And in the healthcare, we tend to really focus on the individual, but sometimes interventions in higher levels, such as policy-based interventions, which may, one example is the smoking and not smoking in public areas, those types of things. So those interventions are related to community trials, whereas, it may be if we're doing field trials for a specific type of intervention, it may be like an intervention on how to stop smoking that would be examined. So those are just kind of examples. When we're looking at cohort studies, and that's very common in epidemiological studies, and that's a group of people who have a typical or a same characteristic or problem or experience. So cohort studies you may be looking backwards, what has happened, or you may have a cohort and look forward, what happens to that particular cohort. When we're looking at case control design, we're comparing the characteristics between two groups, comparing those who do and those who do not have a particular problem. Longitudinal studies are just kind of how it sounds. It's data collected over 2 time periods, so it's over a period of time. And very often it's referred to in waves. So when we're looking at longitudinal panel design, participants are enrolled in the beginning and are followed through in a number of those waves of data collection. So when we're looking at total population design, this is really something that the CDC tends to do because the local areas report to the state and the state reports to the CDC. So we're looking at very broad, consistent data throughout the United States when we're looking at CDC data, and sometimes that's even beyond. It may be world-related data. So it's like the behavioral risk assessment that's done by the CDC. That's something to obtain information from lots of individuals within a particular population of interest. So another design is repeated cross-sectional design. And this is a series of cross-sectional samples drawn from the same population. And those are done at planned timed intervals. So the samples are equal, and but they're composed of different people. So another design is the interrupted time series, where the data is collected on the same types of variables, but at multiple time points across a trajectory of time. And very often 2 or more groups are compared. When we're looking again at that longitudinal design, one of the advantages is really looking at accurately looking at events and problems that arise and how long those events, problems may persist. One disadvantage is maintaining contact or loss of your participants. And if there's a loss, then it really impacts the reliability and validity of the studies. And very often those who are lost are those who may experience problems. So it may be, the results may be more positive, so to speak, than what is reality. So all those things are considerations. So when you're examining studies, if it's a longitudinal design or over a time period, was there loss of the population, and what does that mean in the results of the study? So those are all things to think about. So let me know if you have any questions about the materials covered here.